I was just his assistant, but every time he took off his ring, nothing felt fake anymore. I knew I was screwed the first time he asked me to book a hotel under a fake name. Not because I suspected anything criminal, but because he smiled at me after, like I was the only person in the world who understood what he really meant. Elliot Grayson. 42. CEO of Greystone Media. Married. A household name in Manhattan's elite advertising world. And my boss. My name's Jesse Lang. I'm 28. His assistant. His calendar manager. His excuse maker. His secret keeper. I never intended for it to get this far. I just wanted a job, a paycheck, and maybe just maybe little peace after the chaos that was my early 20s. But Elliot had a way of looking at you like you mattered. And when you've spent most of your life being invisible, that kind of attention feels like heroin. The first time he touched me, it wasn't sexual. It was a late night in the office. Everyone else was gone. He stood behind me while I updated his flight itinerary and placed a hand on my shoulder, just a light squeeze. Nothing inappropriate. But it lingered. Long enough to say what words didn't. "You're a lifesaver," he whispered. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that moment. Wondering if I'd imagined the softness in his voice. The way his fingers brushed just slightly over my collar. Then came the business trip to LA. A 5-star hotel. 2 rooms, naturally. But the night before the pitch meeting, he knocked on my door just past midnight. His tie was loose. The top buttons of his shirt undone. His face unreadable. "I can't sleep," he said. "Mind if I sit with you?" He didn't sit. He paced. Talked about pressure. Expectations. How hard it was to always play the part. Husband. Leader. Public figure. And then took off his wedding ring. Just slid it off and placed it on the table between us like it weighed 100 pounds. "I hate lying," he said quietly. And somehow, I knew that wasn't about the pitch or his clients or his investors. It was about us. Or what wasn't supposed to be us. That night, he kissed me. And every wall I'd built to protect myself crumbled like sand under a tide. I should have stopped him. Should have said no, should have thought of his wife, his kids, his reputation, my job. But instead, I kissed him back. Like I was drowning and his mouth was oxygen. From that point forward, it became a pattern. Always private. Always controlled. Never discussed outside locked doors or encrypted messages. And always after the ring came off. Like that small gold band was the last wall between right and wrong, and taking it off made him feel human again. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't even lust. It was something deeper. Something murkier. Like 2 people recognizing the same cracks in each other's walls and deciding not to look away. I kept telling myself it was just physical. That he was using me. That I was using him. But then came the night he showed up at my apartment. Soaking wet from the rain, no umbrella, hair plastered to his forehead. "I left," he said. I thought he meant the office. He didn't. He meant her. His wife. Of 16 years. He'd told her everything. Not about me, exactly, but about how he couldn't live the lie anymore. How he was tired of smiling through dinner parties, pretending the life he'd built was enough. He sat on my couch that night, shaking. Like a man who'd set fire to his entire life just to warm his hands by the flame. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "I don't even know who I am without the lies." I wrapped a blanket around him. I told him the truth. "You're just a man. Who deserves to be honest." But it wasn't that simple. The media caught wind. Someone leaked the separation. Tabloids speculated. Rumors flew. Some named me outright. I started receiving threats. You're ruining a family. You homewrecker. You disgusting F. I'd spent years clawing my way out of closets, avoiding labels, dodging stereotypes. And now the spotlight was scorching me alive. Elliot wanted to go public. He wanted to protect me. But his PR team begged him to wait. Just a few months. Let it blow over. Don't add fuel. He asked me to be patient. But patience felt a lot like loneliness. It got harder to see him every day and pretend we were just boss and assistant. Harder to ignore the glances. The silences. The way he still slipped that ring on whenever we left the office. I asked him once, "Do you still wear it because you miss her?" He looked startled. Hurt. "No," he said. "I wear it because I'm scared of what happens when I stop pretending." I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. But something in me cracked. Because I didn't want to be his secret anymore. I wanted to be his truth. And then, as if the universe heard me, everything collapsed. His wife gave an exclusive interview. Tears. Betrayal. Headlines. Sympathy. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Everyone connected the dots. My apartment got vandalized. My mother stopped returning my calls. HR called me in and asked if I was involved in a relationship that might compromise company integrity. Elliot was furious. He threatened to resign. But I stopped him. Because I didn't want to be the reason he lost everything. So I quit. Left a note on his desk. No drama. Just truth. I love you. But I won't be your hiding place anymore. And then I walked away. 1 week later, he showed up again. This time, not in a suit. No ring. No walls. Just a man. Standing in the middle of my living room. "I'm done hiding," he said. Then he dropped his phone. Turned it face up. And I saw the headline. Greystone CEO comes out, "I'm done living a lie." He reached for my hand. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. "Tell me it's not too late," he said. I pulled him into my arms. And I kissed him like we had nothing to lose. Because finally we didn't. We didn't speak much that night. Not because there was nothing to say, but because words felt so small, so useless, against the gravity of what he'd done. Elliot Grayson, husband, father, CEO, public figure, had chosen truth over reputation. Me over fear. Us over the lie. I watched him as he stood at my kitchen counter, making tea like he'd done it 100 times, like this had always been his home. "Do you think people will forgive you?" I asked quietly. He didn't look at me. Does it matter? It should have. His kids, his company, the investors, the board, hell, the entire world had opinions. But in that moment, none of it seemed to reach him. There was something raw in his face. A lightness I hadn't seen before. The weight was gone. He turned to me then. "I just want to live without lying. Even if it costs me everything." It almost did. By the end of the week, the board called an emergency meeting. They asked him to step down. They masked it as a temporary leave of absence for personal reasons, but we both knew what it was. Punishment. Not for falling in love but for daring to be honest about it. His name was stripped from emails, press releases, office door plaques. His photo was quietly replaced in the company's leadership page. I watched all of it happen from the sidelines, powerless to stop it, heart aching for a man who'd finally chosen freedom and was now being crucified for it. He never once asked me to feel guilty. "I knew what I was risking," he said. But I did feel guilty. Because the world saw me as the reason he fell. The reason he changed. They didn't know he'd always been like this. That the man they respected had been performing his whole life. He wasn't broken. He was finally real. We moved in together a month later. Not because we were ready. Not because we'd planned it. But because his apartment felt too much like the life he'd left behind. And mine felt too small to carry what we were trying to build. So we started over. New place. New furniture. New routines. Every morning, he made coffee and kissed me on the forehead before I even opened my eyes. Every night, we watched reruns of old sitcoms on the couch, tangled up in each other like teenagers too scared to fall asleep. And for a while it was good. Quiet. Real. Safe. But even peace can be deafening when you're used to chaos. And slowly, the cracks returned. It started with the looks. At grocery stores. On sidewalks. At the gym. We'd hold hands, and people would stare. Not always cruelly but long enough to remind us that we were other. Then came the whispers. I overheard two women near the bookstore murmuring, "Is that the assistant? The one he left his wife for?" The phrase stuck to me like a stain I couldn't wash off. The one he left his wife for. Like I was a scandal, not a person. Elliot noticed it too. He started flinching when someone recognized him in public. Began wearing hats, sunglasses, lowering his voice in cafes. He was free but he wasn't free. "I thought this would get easier," he said once, staring at the ceiling in the dark. I didn't have the heart to tell him I had thought the same. One night, we went to a fundraising gala. It was the first time we'd gone to something together as a couple. He wore a black tux. I wore navy. We looked like a goddamn power couple. But the room was ice. Old colleagues avoided us. Investors smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. His ex-wife was there too, radiant and cold, standing beside a real estate mogul who clearly wanted everyone to know she was doing just fine without him. Elliot held my hand under the table. I wanted to tell him it didn't matter. That we were stronger than this. But I could feel the storm building inside him. The guilt. The shame. The echo of a life he had burned to the ground and the people still sifting through its ashes. When we got home, he poured a glass of scotch and sat in silence for 20 minutes. Then he said, "Maybe we should have waited. Let the dust settle." I felt it like a punch. Waited for what? I asked. For the world to forget, he said softly. For people to stop looking at us like we're a mistake. I swallowed hard. Do you think we're a mistake? He looked at me then, and for a moment I saw a flash of fear in his eyes. No, he said. But sometimes I wonder if they were right. That night, I slept on the couch. Things got better again, slowly. He started writing. Not emails. Not speeches. Not press releases. Essays. Raw, personal, vulnerable pieces about identity, masculinity, expectations. He published one on Medium under a pseudonym. It went viral. Then came podcast interviews. A few small speaking gigs. Suddenly, he wasn't just the disgraced CEO, he was a voice for something bigger. A symbol of what it meant to walk away from the life you were told to live, and instead, build one from scratch. I watched him come alive in a way I hadn't seen before. And for the first time, I believed we might actually be okay. Until the night he got the phone call. His daughter had been hospitalized. A bad fall. Nothing life-threatening but serious. He flew to Chicago immediately. Didn't even pack a bag. I told him I understood. I told him to go. I didn't expect him to stay for 3 weeks. I tried not to take it personally. Family came first. Always. But as the days dragged on and the phone calls grew shorter and the texts more vague, I felt something unraveling between us. When he finally came home, he was different. Quieter. Distant. Heavy. "I stayed with her," he said. "My ex." I nodded, trying not to show what I felt. "Was it okay?" He shrugged. "She's angry. But she's also tired." We talked. A lot. About the kids. About us. About everything. I didn't ask the question I wanted to. Because I was afraid of the answer. Instead, I just asked, "And how do you feel?" He didn't answer. He just walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Days passed. We tried to go back to normal. Breakfast. Work. TV. Sleep. But the air between us was different. Thinner. Brittle. One night, I found him staring at the drawer where he used to keep his wedding ring. He wasn't wearing it, but he looked like he was thinking about it. "You still love her," I said quietly. His head snapped up. "No. I mean, I don't know. Not like that. It's complicated." I nodded. "Do you still love me?" I asked. That question hurt more than the answer that followed. "I think I'm still trying to figure out who I am without all of this," he said. "And I don't want to hurt you by needing space." I stared at him. At the man who had set fire to his life for me, and now stood before me like he didn't know if it was worth it. "I didn't ask you to choose me," I said, voice cracking. "You did that on your own." He stepped toward me. "I know. And I don't regret it. But I don't know how to be this yet. A good father. A good man. A good partner. Not when everything around me is still burning." I felt my chest tighten. "So what are you saying?" He looked down. "I need time." I nodded. Because what else could I do? He packed a bag that night. Left quietly. Didn't say when he'd be back. And I stood in the doorway long after the sound of his car had faded, wondering how love could be so loud one moment and so silent the next. The apartment felt too big without him. It wasn't large by any means, a modest two-bedroom in Brooklyn with creaky floors and a leaky faucet, but without Elliot's presence, it echoed with a kind of hollow ache. Every corner reminded me of him. His toothbrush still in the cup. His hoodie draped over the couch. A half-finished book on the nightstand with a dog-eared page. I told myself not to text him. He needed space. Time. Clarity. But some nights I'd open my phone and just stare at our last message thread. The last thing he'd said was, "This isn't goodbye. Please remember that." But what was it, then? A pause? A soft exit? A buffer to ease the blow? I tried to fill the void with work. I picked up freelance gigs. Helped a friend with her startup branding. Reorganized my closet. Twice. And still, every night, I waited for the sound of his key in the lock. It never came. 2 weeks after he left, I got a call from his sister. "Have you heard from him?" she asked. I sat upright on the couch. "Now Is everything okay?" "He's not answering my calls. Or Mom's. We figured maybe he was staying with you again." My stomach dropped. "No. He left to clear his head. Said he needed time." A long pause. Then she said, gently, "He told you about the depression, didn't he?" I froze. "What depression?" Her voice cracked. "Jesse Elliott's battled depression for years. It got worse after the divorce. He hid it, especially during the kids' custody process. But I thought Ayasamid would have told you." My throat tightened. I had no idea. And suddenly, the distance, the silence, the weight in his eyes, it all made horrifying sense. I ended the call, heart racing, and without thinking twice, called him. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Still nothing. I checked his social media. His last post was 10 days ago, a link to a nonprofit for queer youth. I messaged him there. No response. I called his ex-wife. We hadn't spoken since everything went public. Jessie, she answered, guarded. I know this is awkward, I said, voice shaking. But have you heard from him? A pause. No. Not since last week. Did he say where he was going? No. He just said he needed to disappear for a while. My blood ran cold. Disappear? She sighed. He gets like this. Especially when he feels like he's let everyone down. Do you think? I couldn't finish the sentence. She went quiet. Then finally, she whispered, I don't know. I hung up and stared at the wall, frozen. And then I ran. I went to every place I could think of. The cabin upstate he used to talk about, the old apartment near Tribeca he once said he missed, even the rooftop of the Greystone building where we'd shared our first stolen kiss. I checked his gym. His old therapist's office. His favorite bookstore in the village. Nothing. I even called the police to file a wellness check, but with no current address and no signs of harm, they couldn't do much. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat the next day. By the third day, I was unraveling. And then, just when the spiral reached its darkest point, I got a text. From an unknown number. In Vermont. Needed quiet. I'm okay. Not ready to talk. But alive. Alive. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. He came back 3 weeks later. I was making coffee when I heard the key. My heart slammed into my ribs. I turned, and there he was. Thinner. Paler. A full beard grown in. He looked like he'd walked through a storm and hadn't fully come out the other side. I didn't speak. Neither did he. We just stared at each other. And then he stepped forward, slowly, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he moved too fast. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was raw. I should have told you. About everything. I walked to him. Touched his face. You don't ever have to hide from me again. He broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet crumble into my arms. And I held him. Like if I let go, he'd disappear all over again. He started therapy again. This time, seriously. Twice a week. Every week. He let me come with him once. Sat beside me on the couch and told the therapist, I don't know how to love someone without feeling like I owe them a version of myself I can't sustain. And I told him, you don't owe me anything but the truth. It was slow work. Some days were good. Some days were very, very bad. But he stayed. We stayed. His kids visited that spring. I offered to stay somewhere else, give them space, but he shook his head. They need to know you. Not as the scandal. As the man I love. It was awkward at first. The youngest barely spoke to me. The older one asked bluntly, did you fall in love before or after you broke up our family? I wanted to crawl into the floor. But Elliot, calm and firm, said, it's okay to be angry. But Jessie didn't break anything. I did. By lying to all of us for too long. That night, we made s'mores in the backyard. By the end of the weekend, the kids were laughing again. They asked if I'd come visit them in the summer. It felt like forgiveness. Or maybe just the beginning of it. 6 months passed. Then a year. The public forgot. The tabloids moved on. Greystone got a new CEO. Elliot never went back. Instead, he launched a non-profit support groups for LGBTQ+ professionals struggling to live authentically in corporate spaces. Workshops. Panels. Grants for queer youth studying business. It wasn't flashy. But it was his. He asked me to join as communications director. I said yes. Not because I missed being his assistant. But because I believed in him. And in us. One evening, we were at a donor dinner. He stood on stage, telling his story, strong and unshaken. When he stepped down, I met him by the edge of the crowd. "You were incredible," I said. He looked nervous. His hands were shaking. "I have to ask you something," he said. I blinked. "Okay." Then he pulled a small box from his pocket. Opened it. A ring. But not the old one. A new one. One meant only for us. "I've worn a ring for most of my life and never once did it mean what it was supposed to mean," he said, voice trembling. "But if you'll wear this one, I promise it will never be a lie." Tears blurred my eyes. I didn't need to think. I held out my hand. And as he slipped the ring on my finger, I whispered, This finally feels real." We didn't have a big wedding. No cameras. No guest list 200 names long. No dramatic walk down the aisle under chandeliers and string quartets. Instead, we chose a quiet garden on the edge of the Hudson, just before sunset. 10 chairs. Family. A few close friends. His kids stood with us. My mom flew in. She cried the whole time, soft tears of relief, not shame. He wore a dark navy suit. I wore gray. We wrote our own vows. He said, "I spent most of my life building walls. You tore them down with kindness. With patience. With honesty. I love you for who you are. And I finally love me when I'm with you." I said, "You once told me you didn't know how to love someone without pretending to be someone else. But this isn't pretend. This is home. You are home." We kissed. The applause was small. But it was the loudest truth I'd ever heard. Marriage didn't fix everything. There were still bad days. Arguments about the dishes. About money. About whether we should adopt a dog or not. But there was laughter, too. And late-night dancing in the kitchen. And morning kisses that tasted like sleep and promise. We made rituals. Taco Tuesdays. Friday movie nights. Birthday scavenger hunts. He insisted on reading the news out loud every Sunday. I pretended to hate it. Secretly, I adored it. We built a life out of moments so small the world would never notice them. But they meant everything to us. His relationship with his kids grew stronger. They came to stay with us over the summers. Sometimes on holidays. We took them to Italy once. He tried to order pizza in broken Italian. Got us 5 bowls of soup instead. The kids howled with laughter. So did I. He looked embarrassed, then proud. "You 3 ganging up on me already?" he asked. The youngest said, "Well, you married Jessie. Now we're a package deal." Elliot's eyes welled with tears. He nodded. "Best deal I ever made." Years passed. The nonprofit expanded. He became a speaker at conferences around the country advocating for transparency, mental health, and LGBTQ+ leadership. His story helped people. I saw it in the letters. The emails. The strangers who came up after panels just to say, "Thank you for being brave enough to be honest." I stood beside him every time. Not in the shadows. Not hidden. But as his partner. His husband. His person. There was something healing about being seen, really seen for exactly who we were. We started mentoring younger queer professionals. Hosting dinners. Workshops. One night, a boy of 21, terrified and soft-spoken, asked, "How did you know it would be worth it?" Elliot looked at me. Then said, "Because even if the world didn't understand, he did." I took the boy's hand. And said, "That's what you wait for. Someone who won't ask you to hide." My mother died quietly one spring. Peacefully. No pain. She left me her wedding ring. A simple silver band, scratched and aged. She said in her will, "You'll know when to pass it on." I kept it in a drawer. Until the day his daughter came to us. She was 25. Engaged. Glowing. We threw her an engagement party in the backyard. As we were cleaning up, she pulled me aside. "I know it wasn't easy," she said. "But thank you. For staying. For loving him when he couldn't love himself." My eyes stung. I hugged her. And quietly slipped the silver ring into her hand. "This was my mom's," I said. "She'd want you to have it." She cried. So did I. Elliot watched us from across the yard, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. There was one last chapter. One I didn't expect. He got sick. Not all at once. A persistent cough. Fatigue. Tests. Scans. More tests. Then came the diagnosis. Stage 3 lung cancer. We never even smoked. It felt like a cosmic joke. Cruel and lazy. We fought it together. Doctors. Hospitals. Treatments. He lost weight. Lost hair. Lost strength. But never once did he lose us. I shaved my head when he started chemo. He rolled his eyes, smiling. You didn't have to go bald for sympathy points. I kissed his forehead. I didn't. I just wanted you to feel a little less alone. Even in sickness, we found laughter. We watched old movies. Read each other poetry. Took walks when he could. On our anniversary, he said, "This isn't the ending I wanted." I said, "Then we keep writing." And we did. Until the very last line. He passed away in early winter. The world was quiet that morning. Snow fell soft outside the hospice window. He was in my arms. Eyes closed. Breath shallow. I whispered, "It was never fake." Not for a second. Not even before you took the ring off. He didn't respond. But I felt his fingers tighten around mine. Just once. Then stillness. A stillness so complete it felt holy. I gave his eulogy. Stood before a sea of faces, some familiar, some not. Told the story of a man who spent his first life performing and his second one living. Who tore down his own kingdom to build something smaller but truer. Who taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about courage. And truth. And staying. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I ended with the words he once said to me in a hotel room in Los Angeles. "I hate lying." I smiled. So he stopped. I still wear my ring. Not every day. But on days when I need to remember. What we fought for. What we earned. What we survived. Sometimes I catch myself looking at the door, waiting for him to walk through. He never does. But somehow I still feel him here. In the quiet. In the light through the window. In the warmth that lives in this home we built together. I'm not just his assistant anymore. I'm the man he chose. The man who chose him back. And that? That will never be fake. Not for a second. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.